Hello, Team Dyess. Welcome back to Promotion and Leadership class. I'm Master Sergeant Morera from the 436 Training Squadron, here to pick up on where we left off from the first half. We're on to part 2, where we're going to be covering promotion points and boards, improving EPRs, mission and vision statements, showing progression, management versus leadership, and then we're going to talk about resources again. So one thing that some of us might understand, some of us might not understand, is the points formula for your last rated EPRs. 3 EPRs are what's going to consist of WOPS scores. We're going to talk something a little differently for the senior NCOs, but for our staff sergeant and tech sergeant testers, those who are hopeful to make those ranks, points are going to be a big part of whether or not you make that rank to staff or to tech. Now, one of the big things about this slide, you can look at it, you can see what the calculations are, but what I want you to understand is in the last 3, I've had a troop or 2 who received a not ready now, and they think that they'll never get promoted after that. That's not the truth. If you work hard, you can see that your points will shoot up significantly if you can make a good recovery. We're talking last 3, 150 points for that not ready now, 200 for a promote, but this person turns around and gets a promote now with 250 points at the top. They now have 215 points. It is a possibility to recover from a bad situation, and I'm proof of that. When I was a young airman, I got into some trouble. I got a DUI when I was a senior airman, and after that, I had to make a big recovery from a 3 EPR, which everybody said you can't make rank with. It turns out I could. I worked hard. I changed my behavior and my attitude, and that was the most important part behind getting promoted and making it to where I am today now. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about here is senior airman testing for E5 and E6. There's no board. This is strictly on WOPS, so we talk about the points that are involved here. So this is a quick idea of what the expectations are going to be. Your WOPS testing, 200 points between the SKT and the PDG portion of it. Some people only test PDG only, which means you're essentially going to have a 100-question test that's worth 200 points. Now, up to the last 3 eligible EPRs are what they're going to take for the score for your EPRs. All decoration points will be added up with 25 points possible. Your total points, your total score, is a maximum of 475. This is one of the most important things about this. Your decorations, making sure that you get a decoration from each place that you leave or from a contingency deployment if you've done a great job. Don't just ask for one. It might be something worth writing and putting forward and then giving to your supervisors to see if they're willing to put forward the work and get one for that deployment. Technical sergeant through senior master sergeant, we don't receive EPR or decoration points. Instead, everything is on a single board score. Tech sergeants receive a must promote or promote now. That's going to increase your chances, but it is not a guarantee for anything. Just like a strat for a master sergeant or senior master sergeant, there is no guarantee that you're going to get promoted. Sometimes it takes another cycle with another good rating to get promoted. But in many cases, this can be that game changer. Masters and seniors see increased scores just the same with a stratification, but ours is a little different. It's either you get one or you don't. For the tech sergeants, there's a possibility, depending on the numbers of personnel, for you to get a promote now or a must promote. Master sergeants and seniors, it's only the top 10% of master sergeants in the wing that might get a stratification. Each promotion board is going to consist of a colonel and 2 chief master sergeants. Now, these chiefs are typically going to come from your functional area. That does not mean that they're going to come from your AFSC, but rather your functional area. For instance, AFSC 1PO-X1, aircrew flight equipment. It's my career field. We have 2 other career fields that might be in our functional area. One of them is weather. They also compete sometimes for, we fall within the same assignment realm at AFPC. this might be one of the persons that is on your board. And that's why it's important that when we talk about when you're building your EPR bullets, it's important not to be so specific toward your career field, but to talk a little bit more in broad, in a broader version of it, talk about your, what's the word I'm looking for here? Layman's terms. You have to be direct. You have to tell them something that they can understand. Not everybody understands, like we talked about in the last slides, what a BA 22 is. The max board score for your promotion board from Tech Sergeant through Senior Master Sergeant is going to be 450 points. Packages are scored by each member on a scale of 6 to 10 with a half-point increments in between. So what that means is each member is going to score you between a 6 and a 10, with 6.5, 7.5, so on being the numbers in between. These scores are then going to be combined. So let's take, here we have a chief, another chief, and a colonel. One who scored you a 7, a 7.5, and a 7.5. Now we add all of those up and we have 22. Now we take 22 and you're going to multiply that by 15. 330 is the board score. This is what your board score is. Now what do we do to improve your board score? Because the 330, that might not be enough in your career field to get promoted to Senior Master Sergeant or just to Master Sergeant. So I answer this question with another question. Why did you attend this class? Why did you decide to view this class? You did so because you hope to improve your board scores. You hope to have the opportunity to promote. And that's something that I hope we can get forward, we can get through and figure out a couple of things to help you be more promotable. Here is a board score. And you can take a look at some of the things that are on here, how many of the things that are all put together, but one of the things down at the bottom, you'll see some board score groupings. We have something now called the gray area, where if there is a tie for a certain score, and maybe that score is getting close to the cutoff, they might have to go back, revisit those packages, and determine which one stands out amongst the lower end of those packages, and give them a half-point bump. There are a couple of different ways that this is interpreted by different boards, though. Some boards might include half-point increments to everything. If you look over to the right, you'll see the board score and what the cutoff is. Some of these board scores, especially towards Senior Master Sergeant, they can be a little bit difficult to get. This particular score was one that did not have a strat. With the stratification, sometimes you can see your points go up anywhere between 20 to 60 points. Always look at your previous statements, but you never want to look at that previous statement to see something that you're going to write again. Try not to copy your bullets and paste them onto the next EPR, because you're not showing progression. You're not showing any difference in the duties that you performed. Make sure to take that it's not to take away from, and not to write again. That's mostly what you're trying to do here. Now, some things can be similar. Say, for instance, you were inspecting parachutes at one point. Now, instead of being the inspector, you should be the trainer. You should be the one conducting quality assurance on those parachutes. There are a couple of different things that you can change to show that you have growth in that area. It's not to say that you can't write that you inspected them again. But what has changed in your duties from the previous year? Distinguish that growth. Bullet placement is very important as well. Block 3 of the EPR, you might want to put some of your best ones toward the back. But don't just consider the best ones going on the back. What's the first thing that you want somebody to see in your EPR? What is the first line going to say? One of your strongest duty bullets should be up at the top. Duty related, how you perform your tasks. Show everybody on that board how capable you are of performing your duties. And then, of course, on the back side, we're going to cover a lot more of what your leadership capabilities are and why you should be promoted to that next level. Similar to promotion statements, you're hitting them with a bang at the end, saying this is why you deserve to be promoted. Squadron involvement is often it's a very big factor in your promotion. I don't just mean going out and volunteering with your unit advisory council. That's a great thing to do, but just seeing some of the other members in your squadron, getting to know their names, getting to know what they do and what their part in the mission is. These are very important things that many of us don't always follow through with. We don't know some of the other personnel that we are working with within our squadrons, sometimes even within your own work center. Getting to know more people will help you to stand out. Being a part of a club or a council, those are also great things to help you stand out within the base. Part of the big reason behind being a part of a club or a council is so that you can meet other people, so that you can network with them. And networking can go a long way, from just getting your job done and average duties during the day to having some partners that you can get together and put on something much like this. Notice here in this EPR, we have a set of numbers, 1 through 8. If you look at these numbers, number 1, mission accomplishment. This is something that you hope to capture in the EPR. Also notice that there are 8 lines that are open to this particular EPR. If that's the case, line 1 could be mission accomplishment. 2, what's your resource utilization? So on. I think you get the picture. Big picture here is this. For your performance and primary duties, this is the primary duties block, you can capture all 8 of these things to show that you are versatile, that you can accomplish all of these different aspects of being a leader and, of course, to performing your duties. Something that I've had a couple of conversations with some of my fellow senior NCOs and, of course, with some of my NCOs. Who do you recognize from this list that sticks out? Before you go in to a force distribution board, some of us may have these and some may not. If you are going to go into one of these and you're going to be talking about one of your airmen and why they deserve to be promoted, you also have to be prepared to speak to other personnel in the squadron. One thing that happened during some discussions at the 912th was some folks would walk in, there'd be a list of 30 staff sergeants that are eligible for tech sergeant within the squadron. The commander puts a list in front of you and says, who do you know on this list? Now, twofold on this one. One thing that this says about you is what do you know about your NCOs, your airmen? If you can't answer that question, that could reflect a little negatively on you. If you don't know what those other staff sergeants are doing or what they're capable of, how can you compare them to your own staff sergeant, for instance? Now, of course, that's just an example. Staff sergeants don't think that you're immune. You also rate on some senior airmen and some A1Cs, and some senior airmen even rate. If you're going to be called into that office to defend your airmen and why they deserve a promotion, you need to know the other members in your organization to know who they compare against and what those other members are doing. Another thing that they might ask is when you're asking, hey, who do you know on this list? Every time that person gets mentioned, that's a little bit of credibility to them. So that also speaks to those who are going to be competing in those boards. How do you relate to the members in your squadron? How is your attitude perceived? How is your behavior perceived? I'm not saying that you have to go out and please everybody. I understand that some of us have a different way of looking at things. But it is a good thing to work well with people, to be able to communicate well with people, and to be good at your job. Leadership effect. Sometimes we're not always going to have the opportunity to be NCOICs or superintendents or flight chiefs. I understand that. There was another master sergeant in the position, and he was senior in rank to me, and there was no position for me to really hold a significant duty title. I'm going to need to find a way to show that I have a leadership effect. Now, some of those things could be through private orgs or clubs. There's many other things. You don't just have to go to your on-base institutions and private organizations to stand out as a leader. There are ways to do it within the spiritual realm, within your churches or what have you. There are different places that you can stand out as a leader, and you don't always have to hold a duty title to be a leader. What I mean by that is, in some duties, and you may have seen this yourself, in some duty sections, you'll see that there's somebody that everybody goes to. They're not the NCOIC, they're not the flight chief, but everybody seems to go to this person because of their wealth of knowledge, because of how they get the job done, or just because of their simple people skills. Leaders will recognize that, and so will some supervisors. And if supervisors are catching on to that kind of behavior, they'll be the ones who come into those force distribution boards and say, while this person may not be the NCOIC, I wish that they had the rank to do so. They should have the rank to do so. That's a great block to stand on to say this is why this person needs to be promoted. Consistency. If you showed up during the last 6 months, and I don't mean that you just PCS'd in, meaning you were there and suddenly you just started doing stellar stuff within the last 6 months, some people are going to take note of that. That's not to say that you weren't doing anything the first 6 months, but if it just seems like you're trying harder the last 6 months toward that EPR, somebody might take notice to that. You should be consistently performing highly all year long, and not just because you're trying to get promoted. It's a core value. Excellence in all we do. Always work hard, no matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're going to separate next week. You should continue to work hard, because hard work ethic is valued, and it is seen within individuals. And of course, if you're going to have a recommendation. There are intangible things that are discussed during some of these boards. Sometimes if you've come up with something big and new, if you've done something that leadership hasn't been able to do in a long time, big things that you have brought to the table from your level, from those performance levels that we spoke about in the part 1. These are single but impactful events. If you've done something like this, if you've made a big impact and it's been seen all the way up to leadership, this is part of the discussion, and it might be the tipping point for bringing somebody into a discussion or not. Some guidance that I went and sought guidance from a squadron commander once before I gave this briefing, and I wanted him to answer a few questions for me. I wanted him to answer the questions of what is going to get somebody promoted. What do you specifically, as a commander, look at? At the time, that commander was Lieutenant Colonel Adam Nova Rosado. Colonel Rosado said that one of the highest considerations is given to the level of impact to their actions, that being job performance and involvement with their airmen. Key involvement with their airmen. Your airmen sometimes will speak to your leadership capabilities. How often they go to you, how much they trust you, how much they respect you. If you have the respect of your airmen, and if they're working hard, and if the whole team is doing well, that speaks volumes to a leader or somebody who should be a higher level of leader. And of course, knowing your job well, being able to speak to your job well. These are some things that your commanders might be looking at. That's what Colonel Rosado was looking for. Somebody who could perform their duties, knew their job, had some passion about their job, and were capable leaders. Another thing that Colonel Rosado talked about, we had a squadron exec, and he was staff sergeant doing great things. And he would often say that, hey, can somebody else do the job that he's doing? And vice versa. Do you think he could do the job that somebody else is doing? Maybe in an NCOIC position in analysis. That's something that is considered here. How well somebody might perform in another duty. If we were to reassign you today into an exec position where you had to straighten up your bearing a little bit, so to speak, do you think that you'd be able to perform those duties? That's something that might be considered here, is how versatile you really are. Because a leader can't be sloppy. We have to own up to our mistakes. We have to have accountability. The Air Force core values are, of course, epitomized by everybody, but we have to be the example, the pillar of that. You also need to know your boss's priorities and know the boss's priorities. Now, this is per Colonel Rosado. Not everybody may believe the same thing, but this does make a lot of sense. What are the priorities of your boss, and that being maybe the squadron commander, and the boss's priorities? And where do we find these? How do we know what priorities to follow? That's something that we'll speak about in this next part. Mission statement. This is where you can find the boss's priorities. These are the boss's priorities. So, for my fellow Mustangs out there, what's our mission statement? Well, there it is. This is the mission statement. This is what we should be doing at the 436th, according to our EPRs. This is what we are trying to do. We're trying to enable the warfighter to fight and win with unrivaled instruction. And trust me, with the instructors that we have over there, I would say it's unrivaled. These are some hard-working individuals. But the difficulty that we have now is to speak to that in our EPRs, to be able to show that we're unrivaled with significant levels of awards, and of course when we get evaluated, whether that be from CCAF or just down to your evaluations when you're being evaluated as an instructor. Are you getting that top-notch evaluation, or are you just skating by and getting that average stuff? Average is obviously not speaking to unrivaled instruction. We also do cutting-edge video productions, and some of the productions that I've seen out of our instructional productions shop, they're amazing. These people really are living up to that. But your unit might be different. Your mission statement might be different. Are you living up to that mission statement? Are you working toward that mission statement? Or are you trying to capture that mission statement in your EPRs? There's also the vision statement. Now, the vision statement, that's not what you're doing, that's where you would like to be. Our vision statement is to be the Air Force's premier instructional facility while producing high-quality video and learning tools. So this is a little bit more about our instructional production side. And while it does speak to their side, that must say that our instructors on the other side for education and training, we're doing so great that we don't have a vision right now. That's not exactly what we're saying right now. We're just saying that this is the focus. Now, for you, is your focus, your vision statement, is that something that you're striving toward, or are you actually accomplishing it? If you're accomplishing it, if our IP office was the premier instructional facility, then they have accomplished the vision statement. It's now the mission. The mission is to sustain that. Do you look like the little girl in the meme there when asked what your mission statement is or your vision statement? Try to get to know these things. In many cases, they're actually in posters or in bulletin boards around your squadron. If you don't know it, and especially if you're a NCO or senior NCO and you're writing EPR and you don't know these things, you're not speaking to them in your own EPRs, then you may not have as much of an impact or as much of a standout EPR when compared to that of your peers. Get in touch with your mission statement and your vision statement, and you'll go a long way. To show progression, you'll often need a change in your duty title. It's important to demonstrate growth. Some people might hold the duty title of a specialist or maybe craftsman. That's okay for a year or two, but the average duty title change should be about 2 years. There must be a position, so you shouldn't be making one up. Hopefully your squadron doesn't go around making up positions for you to switch into. You need to be proactive, of course, when it comes to duty title change. That doesn't mean that you're going to go and create one or you're going to demand one, but rather, when you think that one is open and you think that you're deserving of having your duty title changed, you could fill out the 2096 form that gets your duty title updated and request through your supervisor that it get brought up to your CSS or to the MPF. Duty titles are a record of progression. You'll see them in your SURF. They're often seen in the boards because your boards will actually see your entire SURF. They'll see those duty titles, and it shows a breadth of knowledge and leadership and your growth. That's the big thing here. They want to see you grow. If you're not growing, if you're not moving from one duty title to the next, then what are you doing? Supervisors, make sure you're looking out for your airmen and changing their duty titles often. Take a look at their SURF, have them print them out for you, or just get into the system and take a look for yourself. Your airmen deserve to have their duty titles changed when they're working at that next level. You're going to see two different types of duty histories here. The first one, I'm not shy, it's me. This is my SURF. This is where I wonder where I went wrong. Or maybe not so much me. Was there maybe somebody else that could have made some changes? Maybe I could have requested some changes to my duty title. I know that at Davis-Monthan, I was an NCOIC at one point for the Aircraft Flight Equipment Main Shop. If I had made the requests to get that duty title updated, then maybe I wouldn't be sitting here with such a vague history. Now, of course, that history has made some significant changes recently, but it doesn't show during that period that I was making any kind of progression. Now, at that time, it may not have been as big of a deal, but right now, for staff sergeants and tech sergeants, as you move up to become master sergeants, tech to master, your board is going to show your progression. Now, if this was current and we were talking about that level, where is your NCOIC or supervisor, section supervisor, quality assurance, flight chief? Many of these things are missing from my own SURF, and that's just something that I'm going to have to deal with for my career, and of course have made some significant recoveries from. But you don't have to be that way, especially for those of you senior airmen and staff sergeants that are out there. Make sure yours doesn't look like this when you get up a little bit further. Make sure that there's been some significant changes. Let's take a look at the next one. Now, if you see this one, we have some apprentice, journeyman, and craftsman, but notice that soon after, it changes. You have NCOIC of not just quality assurance, but just technician training. Assistant NCOIC, Thunderbirds, NCOIC, Thunderbirds, Flight Chief, AFE Programs Manager. These are some great ones to compare to. This shows some progression, and it shows consistent progression. This is something that might get a little notice on a board. Now we're talking management versus leadership. Have you ever heard this saying, you got a sunburn, so now you've damaged government property? We are not assets. We don't hold monetary value. The human being is invaluable. You are invaluable to Team Dyess, to the Air Force. You are not simply a dollar sign. So never let it seem that way. That's also something that a leader needs to understand, though. The difference between management and leadership is that you manage processes, projects, and programs, but you lead, supervise, and mentor people. Some big leadership opportunities are out there for some of these people to lead. A staff sergeant might fill a flight chief role. We know the performance levels from that last set of slides that we looked at in part 1. In those performance levels, a staff sergeant isn't filling a flight chief role because that would be normally where a master sergeant is. If you're filling that role, if you've taken on a flight as a staff sergeant, that looks huge. Rock that one out, be successful. Sometimes it might be a little scary, but you can get through it. And if you've been selected for that role, there's probably a good reason for it. Tech sergeants who fill first sergeant roles, to be the associate first sergeant or the additional duty first sergeant, that's pretty big for a tech sergeant. It really is. It shows that they're standing out. And master sergeants filling squadron superintendent roles. Your squadron superintendents are typically senior master sergeants and chiefs. So if you're filling that role, you're filling some pretty big shoes. And if you're doing a good job at it, that's going to reflect very well on that next EPR. I talked a little bit about my past. I mentioned that as a senior airman, I did some things to not exactly stand out in my career, and I recovered from it. I changed my attitude, changed my perspective, changed my behavior. Many of us as senior NCOs, we've learned a lot over our time in the Air Force. And one thing that many of us will also tell you is we give you this great advice all the time. We're always giving you this advice, and it doesn't seem like anybody ever listens. But I'm going to put each one of these out here, especially the big ones that I've heard from senior NCOs before me to saying it just myself. Take our advice, be more proactive, and try to get outside of your comfort zone earlier and make it your comfort zone. I should have gone back to school sooner. I can't tell you how many people have said this, including myself. But when I completed my bachelor's degree with Ashford University, I felt accomplished. But I also felt that maybe I was a little behind, seeing some staff sergeants and tech sergeants out there that already had them. Don't be that master sergeant or that senior master sergeant who wishes they got it done. Just do it. I should have made tech sergeant earlier. Tech sergeant can be a very difficult rank to make. But with the promote now and must promote capabilities that are out there, it's very high chances that you could make tech very quickly. So stand out in your squadron, do some of those things that help you to get around to your work section and get to know some people. I should have studied harder. I would hope that nobody'd ever have to study harder. I hope that you'd studied enough and that you got promoted. But if you don't think that you studied enough last year, you definitely need to be on the books this year. If you're going to test, let's say in the February and March time frame, you should be preparing in November, maybe even as far back as October, and doing some of those things that we talked about in part 1. Don't do like I did, because if you do, you'll be saying the same thing that I'm saying right now. So ensure your success and take the guidance from your senior NCOs. Break your wall. Get outside of your comfort zone. Try to fill that leading role. When they come up and they say, hey, we need somebody to fill it, I know it's uncomfortable to be a leader sometimes. And it can be difficult when you haven't been placed in that position. But you do have that capability. And if it's open to anybody, all you need to do is raise your hand and step forward. Go to school. And I know that school is not the only thing that's out there. Some of us get wrapped around school and we think that that's the only thing that we can do to make ourselves better. But that's not the only thing that you can do. There are many certifications out there. Look at the Air Force Cool program. Get certified in something that has to do with your career field or something that you're passionate about. There's also licensing opportunities. Are you looking to get your private pilot's license? That is something that you might see as improvement on an EPR, and it is great improvement. It's you trying to become better or trying to have a license or certification to become somebody else or to gain another duty title once you're done with the Air Force. That's a goal. There's also realtor licensing. I've seen that pop up on a couple of 1206s here and there, and even in EPR. It shows that you're striving to go towards something. And does that affect the Air Force? Will you learn something from that? How can you apply that? The next time a big project comes up, take on that project. At first, it's going to be big. There's going to be a lot to it, many different pieces, many different things that you're going to have to do, and maybe you have to work a little bit longer. But the results of that project, they can be pretty impressive. And not just to leadership or for your EPR, but simply for yourself to be able to say, I did this. Again, comfort zone, you might be a little scared. Maybe you're a little overwhelmed by some of these things, but here are the things that you need to consider. These are there's 3 little things there that say Oh no, no, no. Uncomfortable, scary, overwhelming. What will you gain? Will it make you better? Will it improve your resume? Will it accredit who you are to your organization, your workplace, your unit? 3 to 4. Well, I take the pros over the cons. Get out there and do it. So here on our last slide, you're going to notice that not only do I have the resources that we had from last time around, which is Eric Jaren's brown bag lessons, but we also have mastering test taking. Now at the bottom here we talk about the credits though. Let's say that you were going to take these slides, and if you do want these slides, feel free to email me. Morera Steven, find me on Global. I give credit to those who came before me that helped me to form these slides. I also take credit in forming some of these slides and shaping them to be what they are today. If you do want these slides, I'll send them to you to brief them to your squadrons or to take them somewhere else, to another base maybe. All I ask is that you leave those people in those credits and that you add your name to the list as a briefer, or if you decide to make some changes to it, they become your slides once I send them to you. Go out there and make that difference, make that change, and inspire some people to do something big, uncomfortable, get them out of that box, and get them in front of a promotion board. Master Sergeant Selects, I wish you all the best out there, and for the rest of you, hopefully you can be Master Sergeant Selects, seniors, chiefs, or even officers someday with the information that was provided in these slides.
Thank you for watching. This was a production brought to you by the Dyess Top 3 organization. The slides are also provided linked below in the description.